My name is Evelyn Hart, and I turned 34 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. People at work call me steady someone who never forgets the details, who smooths things over when tempers rise. At home, that steadiness became something else expectation. Every year, I set the table while everyone else acted like guests in a hotel I somehow managed. That afternoon, Richmond was already cold enough to sting my fingers when I carried the good plates from the cabinet. My mother basted the turkey, humming softly. My father sat in his recliner, half watching football, half arguing with the television. My sister, Mara, leaned against the counter with her phone, filming short clips of everything: the pies, the dog, herself. When she turned the camera toward me, I smiled out of habit. She grinned back, that sugary grin that always hid something sharp. "Look at her," she said, voice dripping with playfulness. "Our family's little perfectionist." I didn't answer. I lined the forks and folded the napkins, pretending her tone didn't sting. 10 minutes later, when the dining room filled and conversation blurred into noise, Lisa, our cousin, leaned toward me. "Evelyn," she whispered, "you should see Facebook." The phone buzzed in my apron pocket. Mara had posted a 14-second video me placing plates, adjusting the centerpiece, moving like staff at someone else's party. Her caption read, "She was always a servant." My father had already commented with laughing emojis. I stared at the screen until it blurred. Then I set my phone down beside the gravy boat, walked to the coat rack, and slipped my purse over my shoulder. No one noticed until the front door closed. The laughter behind me dulled into the hum of the television. Outside, the air felt cleaner. I walked down Monument Avenue, leaving their voices and my place at the table behind. I walked until the porch lights faded behind me. The air smelled like chimney smoke and cold metal. My phone buzzed again, another notification from Facebook, but I couldn't bring myself to look. I stopped at the edge of Broad Street under a flickering lamppost and finally dialed Aunt Lorraine. She answered on the second ring. "Sweetheart, you okay?" Her voice was warm, steady, the kind that didn't demand explanations. I swallowed hard. "Can you pick me up?" 15 minutes later, her silver sedan rolled to the curb. She didn't ask questions when I got in, just turned up the heat and handed me a napkin from her glove box. I didn't realize I was crying until the paper was already damp. We drove through Richmond's empty streets. Storefronts blurred past barbershops, diners, a florist still lit with yellow bulbs. The city looked like it was holding its breath. Lorraine's hands stayed tight on the wheel. When we stopped at a red light near the bridge, she finally spoke. "You don't owe them your silence anymore." I stared out the window at the dark water below. I didn't know what to say. For years, silence had been my safest currency, cheap, endless, and always expected. When we reached her house, she led me into the guest room without turning on many lights. The air smelled like lavender detergent. On the dresser sat a photo of her and my mother from years ago, smiling like the world was still simple. I changed into one of Lorraine's old sweatshirts and sat on the bed. My phone screen glowed in the dark, hundreds of comments, laughing emojis, Mara's replies to strangers. She takes herself too seriously. She's always been dramatic. The laughter had followed me here through pixels and glass. I turned the phone face down, but the reflection lingered in the room. I lay back, eyes open, and realized the smell of turkey still clung to my jacket, thick as smoke that refused to fade. The morning light slid through Aunt Lorraine's curtains in thin, gold lines. I hadn't really slept, just drifted in and out between the hum of her refrigerator and the faint smell of coffee brewing downstairs. My phone, face down on the nightstand, vibrated once, then again, then kept going. When I finally picked it up, the first message froze me. "Mara, why can't I withdraw $2,000 from our account?" I stared at the words, not a question about where I was, not an apology, not even curiosity, just panic over money. I had closed that joint account at midnight, transferred every dollar, $21,417 to the credit union across town. Years of late nights in the hospital office, Holiday overtime, skipped trips, skipped dinners. Every small next time had turned into savings. And now, for the first time, it was mine alone. I called her. She answered immediately, voice sharp. "Did you touch our account?" I kept my tone even. "It was never our account. Mara, I just added your name years ago to help you build credit." I removed it. She laughed. The kind of laugh meant to cut. "You can't do that. You owe me. For what I asked." Silence. Then the line went dead. Within a minute, my screen filled with messages, 6 in total. "You're selfish. You've changed. You're insane. You'll regret this. I needed that money. You've always been bitter." Each text arrived like a knock I refused to answer. I placed the phone on the dresser and went downstairs. Lorraine was at the kitchen table reading the newspaper, glasses low on her nose. Without looking up, she said, "Coffee's ready." I poured a cup, hands steady for the first time in years. Through the window, Richmond was gray and quiet, the kind of morning that almost forgives. My phone buzzed again upstairs, but I didn't move. I just sipped the coffee, its warmth cutting through the ache, and thought about how strange it felt to finally keep something for myself. By Sunday afternoon, the gray quiet outside had turned into something heavier. I sat at Aunt Lorraine's kitchen table, sorting through the mail she'd asked me to help with, when my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Mara. It was Lucas, my cousin. We hadn't spoken in months. He usually stayed out of family drama, but his name flashing on my screen made my stomach tighten. I opened the message. A photo filled the screen. My old bedroom. The mirror above the dresser was shattered, the drawers ripped out and dumped onto the carpet. My books were scattered, pages bent like broken wings. The caption beneath it, from my brother's account, read, "Cleaning Day." I stared at it until my hands began to shake. Lucas sent another text a moment later. "I thought you should know before they start bragging about it." I couldn't answer. I just stared at the photo again. The room that once smelled of vanilla candles and late-night studying now looked like a crime scene. My makeup scattered like confetti. The framed photo of my college graduation face down on the rug. They hadn't just erased me. They wanted me to see it. Lorraine noticed the change in my face. She set down her cup of tea and came to stand beside me. "What is it?" I turned the phone toward her. She looked for a long time without speaking. Then she exhaled softly. "Some people only respect what they can't break," she said. Her calmness steadied me more than any comfort could have. I opened the photo gallery and began saving every message, every screenshot, every cruel comment, not to reread later, to keep, to build a record, evidence, not emotion. That night, I couldn't bring myself to eat dinner. The house was quiet except for the sound of Lorraine washing dishes. I sat on the guest bed, scrolling through old photos of that same room before it was wrecked the floral curtains, the journal stacked neatly on the nightstand, the mirror still whole. I didn't cry. The anger had already burned itself out. What remained was colder, sharper. I made a folder on my phone labeled "Keep" and saved everything there. If they wanted to show me how much I didn't belong, I'd make sure they couldn't erase the proof. 3 days passed before I heard from Lucas again. I was sitting on Aunt Lorraine's porch, half listening to the sound of passing cars. When his message arrived, I found something you should see. It's a letter, not sent. He didn't explain more, only said he'd slide it under the porch mat after work. When I stepped outside that evening, there it was, an old white envelope, edges yellowed, my father's handwriting sharp and familiar across the front to Mara. I took it inside. Lorraine looked up from the sink but didn't ask. She just handed me a pair of reading glasses and went back to drying the dishes. The first line made my stomach tighten. I used her name again, just for something small. I'll fix it before she ever notices. He hadn't signed it, but I didn't need the signature. The words were enough. The letter went on, a list of excuses written like confessions. The hospital bills came early. The roof leak wouldn't wait. I'll pay it down once work picks up. Then one line stopped me cold. Only $2,400. Barely counts as debt. $2,400. Lorraine took the pages from my hands and read them quietly, lips pressed together. "You think this is real?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked to her desk and powered up her laptop. "Let's find out," she said. I sat beside her as she guided me through the steps, pulling my credit report, line by line, date by date. And there it was, a credit card opened 5 years earlier, my name, my social security number, an unpaid balance of $2,412, closed for delinquency. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My father hadn't just humiliated me, he'd stolen the one thing I thought no one could touch: my name. Lorraine printed the report without a word. The sound of the machine filled the kitchen, steady and mechanical, as if to remind me this wasn't a nightmare but documentation. When it finished, she clipped the letter to the pages and slid them into a manila folder. "Keep this somewhere safe," she said. "You're going to need it." The folder felt heavier than it should have. I held it against my chest as if warmth might make it disappear, but the paper stayed cool. Unflinching proof that what I lost wasn't trust or money, it was the illusion that family meant protection. The call came just after dusk, when the light outside turned the windows blue. I didn't recognize the number at first, but the second I heard her voice, I knew. "Evelyn," my mother whispered, like she was afraid someone might hear her. "There's something in your old room." I didn't let them touch it. "Ask Lucas to look under the bed." Her voice trembled. Then the line went quiet. Before I could ask anything, she hung up. Lorraine watched me set the phone down. "Your mother." I nodded. She sounded scared. Within the hour, Lucas texted found a shoebox. "It's taped shut." He sent a photo, the box covered in dust. My name written in black marker. I told him to open it. A few minutes later, another message arrived. This time with a picture of a small, worn passbook from a local bank. The corners were curled, the ink faded. Inside were pages of deposits: $50 here, $20 there, sometimes just $10. Each entry written in my mother's careful handwriting. The total balance, circled at the bottom, read $3.84.26. "Your mom must have been saving this for you," Lucas wrote. "But the account shows a full withdrawal 2 weeks after your 21st birthday." I didn't need to guess who had done it. Later that night, my mother called again. Her voice was barely audible. "He said it was for bills, the roof, the credit cards. Mara needed new tires. I told him it was wrong, but he said it was all for family." I stayed silent. I could hear her breathing, the faint clatter of dishes in the background, maybe her hands shaking. "I wanted to tell you," she said, crying now. "But every time I tried, he'd say I was making trouble." I stared at the wall across from me, the family photo Lorraine had framed years ago, all of us smiling on her porch. My mother's eyes in that picture were bright, unaware. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I thought keeping the peace was the same as keeping you safe." I didn't trust my voice enough to answer. I just listened until the line went silent. Then I turned off the lamp, the room falling into a soft gray stillness. Somewhere deep down, I felt the last thread of belief in her unravel, quiet as breath. By Monday morning, the anger had cooled into precision. Lorraine found me at the kitchen table surrounded by papers, the letter, the credit report, printouts of the Facebook post, screenshots of Mara's texts. She didn't try to stop me. She simply brought a mug of coffee and said, "We'll make this clean." For hours, we sorted everything. Each photo went into its own labeled envelope. Each text, printed and highlighted, Lorraine, meticulous as ever, wrote dates in the corners with her neat cursive. When the pile was finally in order, she opened her laptop and searched for a name: Sarah Mallory, attorney at law. She helped one of my clients with a fraud case, Lorraine said, quiet, efficient. No drama. Sarah answered our call within 10 minutes. Her voice was calm, unhurried, like someone who had heard every kind of story. I explained everything: the letter, the hidden account, the unpaid card in my name. She didn't gasp or pity me. She just asked for the documents. When we arrived at her small office near Shaco Slip that afternoon, she listened in silence, eyes moving between pages. After 10 minutes, she looked up. "This isn't a misunderstanding," she said. "This is identity theft. You have the evidence." She guided me through the next steps: contact the 3 credit bureaus, file a police report, set up fraud alerts. Her tone stayed factual, but every instruction felt like air returning to my lungs. By evening, my credit was frozen, my accounts secured, my name pulled back into my own hands. Lorraine and I drove home with the windows slightly open, the city lights glinting against the river. At her kitchen desk, I opened my laptop and created a new folder. I named it Proof in all capital letters. Inside, I scanned every document, every image, every trace of what they'd done. Before closing the computer, I slipped a handwritten note into the physical folder. "You don't own me anymore." Lorraine passed behind me, resting a hand on my shoulder. Neither of us spoke. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence, steady and alive. For the first time in years, that silence didn't sound empty, it sounded mine. It happened faster than I imagined. Within a week of filing the fraud reports, the ripple began. One afternoon, Sarah, the attorney, called to confirm that the police had opened an official investigation. "They'll contact your father," she said quietly, "and probably your sister." The words hung in the air like a bell tolling somewhere far away. I thanked her, hung up, and waited for the echo. By Thursday, it came. My mother called from an unfamiliar number. Her voice was small, stripped of its usual composure. "I've filed for divorce," she said. "I told them everything, the account, the card, the money." She paused, then added, "He told me I ruined his life." I didn't know how to respond. Maybe he was right, but he had built the ruin himself. Later that night, Lucas texted again. HR pulled the video. Someone from his company reported it. They said it violated workplace conduct. He's suspended without pay. I read the message twice. The same video that once turned me into a family joke had finally turned on him. The next morning, another update arrived from Sarah. "Someone tried to open a new card under your name last night, same address as your parents' house." The system flagged it instantly. Mara. Her name didn't appear on my phone again. She deleted her accounts within a day. No more filtered selfies. No posts about gratitude or family blessings. Just silence. The family group chat that used to ping at all hours reminders, jokes, guilt-laced invitations was now frozen. No new messages, no apologies, not even curiosity. That silence filled the corners of Lorraine's house like fog. I made coffee, answered work emails, and waited for the sound of something breaking, but nothing came. I thought there would be satisfaction, some grand sense of victory. Instead, there was only a stillness so deep it felt sacred, like standing in the empty shell of a house after the fire's gone out. It was late afternoon when the text came through. "Ryan, can we meet? Just talk." I almost ignored it. For months, every message from my family had meant manipulation or blame, but something about the simplicity of his words felt different, quiet, almost careful. I agreed to meet him at a diner off Carey Street, the kind that still smelled of bacon grease and burnt coffee. He was already there when I walked in, sitting by the window in a faded hoodie. For a second, he looked like the boy who used to share peanut butter sandwiches with me after school. Then he stood, awkwardly, unsure if he should hug me. I didn't move, so he just sat back down. The waitress poured us coffee and left without asking for food. Ryan stared at his hands. "You were right about her," he said finally. "About all of us." He talked slowly, the words heavy like stones he'd carried too long. He told me about our father drinking more, yelling at the walls, calling old friends who'd stopped answering, about Mara's debts credit cards, quick loans, even one under a fake name. About our mother, who barely spoke, still trapped in the house she'd once begged us to leave. I listened. I didn't interrupt. I didn't try to make it easier. At one point, he said, "I kept thinking you'd come home." Fix it somehow. I looked at him then, really looked. The guilt around his eyes, the exhaustion that mirrored my own from years ago. That's not my job anymore, I said softly. He nodded. I know. When we finished the coffee, we walked outside together. The air smelled faintly of rain, the street quiet. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something more, but I spoke first. Don't speak for me again. Ryan. It wasn't anger, just finality. He nodded once, hands in his pockets, and walked the other way. Spring came early that year. The air over Richmond felt lighter, the dogwoods blooming pale pink along the sidewalks near the river. I moved into my apartment on a Saturday morning, the kind of morning that smelled like rain before it fell. The place was small, a single bedroom, narrow kitchen, balcony facing the water, but it was mine. Boxes lined the walls, neatly labeled. Lorraine had insisted on helping, but I unpacked alone, wanting to touch each thing, to choose where it belonged. The silence here wasn't the same kind that used to fill my parents' house. This one felt clean. When the sun reached the window, I made coffee and sat on the floor beside the half-open boxes. My laptop rested on a crate that would later become a table. I logged into my account. The number on the screen glowed steady, 29,873.40s. Almost 30,000. Every dollar I'd kept, protected, earned again. I opened the drawer of my nightstand. Inside, folded in half, lay the linen napkin from that Thanksgiving, the one I'd placed at the head of the table before everything shattered. I had washed it weeks ago, pressed it flat, kept it clean. It was no longer a symbol of service. It was a reminder of what I refused to be. Outside, the James River caught the afternoon light, a moving mirror of gold. I stepped onto the balcony, mug in hand, and let the wind lift the edge of my hair. Somewhere in the city, life went on cars, voices, laughter, but up here, there was only the steady sound of water. They thought I was the servant. I whispered. I was building freedom. The breeze carried the words away, and for once, I didn't need them back.